Hello and welcome to the next part of our room game tutorial. Okay, so in this session we are looking at how to actually create rooms and move between them basically. Okay, so by the end of today's session you should have a room, something like this, where we can move around the rooms, the walls don't let us go through, and if I go between it should load a new room like this, and we're going to have different rooms that we can move right and left between. Okay, so template code I've given you today should look something like this. Yep. Okay, very similar to basically what we left off last time. We've got colors. I've added a couple more colors here to give you some variety for using in the rooms. We've got our player class, which is created and has methods for change speed and update. And remember, we programmed it so that if it hits the wall, if it collides with any walls, then it stops moving basically. Okay, and we also did that for colliding with walls vertically and horizontally on the X and the Y axes. We also created a class for walls in the last video where we've got a initiation class here method being created. And then to actually create the walls last time, we did it here. We made a walls list, and then we added walls to the list. And in this example, I've got two walls, vertical wall and a horizontal wall. Okay, so the code I've given you to start with here basically creates your player, and it's got two walls like that. Okay, just like we did last time where we finished off. Okay, so the method we did it last time was, as I've just said, we've created the walls here. We create a wall, we add the wall to the wall list, and then we add it to the all sprites list. And we have to do that every single time we want to create a wall, which is not ideal, particularly if we want to have multiple rooms. So today we're going to have a better way of doing this. Okay, so we've got a class for our player, we've got our class for our wall. We are now going to create another class for our room. So create room class. Okay, so as we always do, we're going to create a class room, bracket, bracket, like that. Okay, so we're going to create a class to control our rooms. And inside our room, we are going to move in the wall list. Okay, the wall list that we made outside in the main code. Okay, we're going to move it into this class. So just to start with, we're going to create a list and we're going to get it to none, so it's empty to start with. Okay, then as all classes do, we're going to have our init, our initiation constructor class, oops, and refer to itself, and we are going to move the wall list basically into here. So wall list creation, I'm going to call this here, okay, and it's going to be self.wall list. Okay, I'll explain why in a second. Pygame.sprite.group, like that. So all this is doing is made an empty list here. Then we've used the empty list that's here within this class, self.walllist within this class, and we've turned it into a sprite group. Okay, now this actually replaces code we've already got. So now we've put this in here, okay, into our class here. We can actually go down and find it down here within the code. And there it is. And now I can essentially turn that off or delete the code completely, okay? For the minute, I'm just going to comment it out. But that's now basically been moved from there up into our room class. Okay, so that's all we need for this one. We've just defined a basic class for a room that when we run this room class, it creates an empty wall list. Now, why are we doing it this way? Well, we want multiple rooms, and each room needs its own list of walls. So what we've said here is when we create this, it's going to create a room object with its own list of walls that we can use. Okay, so now we've got it so we can create a room. We're now actually going to define the rooms. Okay, so define a room. Okay, and what we're going to do is class room 1. Now, it doesn't have to be called room 1. You could call it room A or room whatever. It could be called the dungeon room or whatever in the future. But for the moment, we're just going to call it room 1. And that is going to inherit all the things from our main master room class. So it's going to inherit everything here, the rule list and everything like that from that. Okay, and again, we're going to have our init for this class, init self, just as we always do, which is going to inherit all the things from the master class. And to do that inheriting from this thing here, we then have to basically call that. And how do we do that? It's room dot underscore underscore init underscore underscore self. That is going to inherit the constructor class from this one, so we have access to all the functions from it. Okay. Right, now this is the important bit now. Remember, each different room, room 1, room 2, room 3, is going to have a different set of walls. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the walls from where we've created them down here into this room 1 class. So we're going to make a list of the walls within this room 1. Okay, so I'm going to make a list of walls, and I'm going to basically create all the walls we need within this. Now I'm going to type this in quickly, and then we're going to explain what we've done here. Okay, so I'm actually going to skip this bit and show you the completed one for this in a couple of seconds time. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Bazinga. And there we are. So I have just written in all these walls ready for us to use. This is basically defined all the walls. Now, I will show you what these look like in a minute, but basically what I've done is I've created walls on the left side with a little gap in between so you can go between, and walls on the right hand side with a little gap in between, and walls at the top and bottom, and then one wall in the middle. So I've created some walls in a room basically, okay? And I've set them all to white at the moment. Remember, we have got different colours available to us, but I'm just using white for this for the moment. So that has defined all of the walls that we need in a room. Now remember, before we did them separately. So for a minute, take your time, code that in, pause the video if you need to, and code the walls for the room. I'll wait here ready for you. Hopefully, you've paused, you've written that in, you've got your walls in your room. Now this is replacing all of the walls down here. So if I just scroll down to where we did them before, okay, where we did them manually here, I'm now going to comment those out because we've replaced them. Okay, comment out, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. Okay, that is all now been created up here. Okay, we've defined all the walls. However, the one thing we haven't done yet is taken these walls and actually put them into our wall list. Okay, so let me do this and explain what we are doing with this. So at the moment we've just got a list of our walls, but they're not actually being created properly yet. So I'm going to make a little loop here, which is going to loop and create walls in a list properly. So how are we going to do this? We're going to go for item in walls. Basically for each item in this walls list, okay, we are going to make sure it's in line here, because otherwise we're going to have a problem. That's all right. For each item in this walls list, we are going to say I'm going to create a new wall, and that new wall equals the wall in this list. Okay, this bit's important, and we're going to add each bit of the wall. Okay, Again, let me just type this in. I'll explain. Item 1, item 2. You can probably guess where this is going. Item 3, item 4. Close like that. So I'm saying for each wall in this list, that one, that one, that one, that one, I'm going to create a new wall object. Remember, this is the wall class up here, there, and I'm passing in the X, the Y, the width, the height, the color. Okay, so let me show you. So I'm creating a new wall using the wall class, and I'm passing in all the different items from this list here. Okay, so for each item in this list, I'm creating a new wall, and then finally I'm going to add it to each new wall. I'm adding to the list of walls for this room. So this room has got its own list of walls, which is based on the new wall that has been created from the wall class. It's a bit like Inception. Okay, so we've created a wall object, and then we're adding it to our wall list for this room. So this room 1 has got its own list of walls that we can use and create whenever we need, like that. So that's all for one room. Okay, but our game is going to have multiple rooms. So for the purpose of this, to make it easy for you, we can customize and change it later on, I'm actually going to copy the whole of this. Now I've copied the whole of room 1 class down here all the way down, including all of the constructor method. I'm copy, Control and C. I'm going to go down here and I'm going to paste. Okay, so I've pasted a whole of this, and guess what? I'm going to call it, instead of room 1, I'm going to call it room 2. And the only thing, just so we can see it's different, all I'm going to do is I'm going to change the color from white to blue. Okay, copy. I'm just going to paste this to blue, just so that it's different, so we can see that we're actually moving between the rooms. And guess what? We're going to do one more time. We're going to create one more room here. So copy the whole of this, copy, and then paste. And this is going to be room 3. And let's change this one to red. So I'm just basically making duplicates of this room. One's going to be white, one's going to be blue, and one's going to be red. Just so you can see what that looks like in its entirety. So I've got my master room class here. Then I've got room 1, which is white. I've got room 2, which has been defined as blue. And room 3, which is defined as red. Now, at the moment, all the rooms are going to have the same layout. But obviously, if you're making a game and later on extensions, we can learn to customize the shape of the room and the layout. But at the moment, we've just got 3 rooms that are different colors, so we can see they are different. Okay, so now we've got our rooms defined. At the moment, this won't really do anything. And why won't it do anything? Because although we've created the class of the rooms, we haven't actually run the actual classes themselves. Okay, so that's the next thing we need to do. Down here, just underneath where we've defined these rooms. Okay, so we're going to initialize the rooms here. I'm going to put initialize rooms. And to do that, we are going to make our rooms list. We're going to make a list of all the rooms, an empty list of all the rooms. And then we are going to make our room, first room equals room 1, which is, remember, this is going to run our room 1 class. And then we're going to add our room 1 to the list by going rooms list dot append, which is going to add it to the list, and then add our room. So that will create a rooms list, an empty rooms list, and it's going to create our room 1, and then we're going to add it to the list. guess what? I'm going to do the same thing. Room equals room 2, and then rooms list dot append, and add our room. And then finally, guess what? Room equals room 3, bracket, bracket, rooms list dot append, add room. So basically create an empty list of rooms, creating our first room, add it, creating our second room, add it, creating our third room, add it, or append it to the list. So now we've got a list of rooms with our 3 rooms which have been created in it. Okay, so now we've got our rooms all created, ready to use. First thing we need to do before we can do it, we've got to decide which room are we going to start in. So set starting room. Now, up to you which room you start in when you mention it. But I'm going to set our room num to 0 to start with. So we start off at room 0. Okay. Right. Is that going to do anything at the moment? And the answer, I'm afraid, is no. Because at the moment, we've still not updated the walls list, and we've not done anything inside our actual main loop. So what we're going to do, let's go down now, go down into our main while loop here. And underneath where we have done all the events for the player, down here, we are going to, well, first thing we need to do is actually create the first room. So we're going to have a variable current room equals rooms list and square bracket room num. So what is that going to do? That is going to set the current room to the room number, which was defined outside the loop, remember, in the room list. So it's going to say the current room that we're in is the room num from the rooms list. Remember, we set that outside here. We set the current room, the starting room, to 0. So to start with, that is going to be room 0. But as you play the game, that room might change as you move between them and things. Okay, so that is going to basically load our current room. It's going to load the current room. Okay, remember this room list has got a list of room objects, so it's actually loading the room object from the list into the game. Now, one final thing before we can actually see something working. This is currently our problem. It's currently looking for a walls list in the main code, but we don't have that anymore. Our walls lists exists within the room that we've got loaded. So now to change that, we are going to current room dot wall list. Okay. So what is that going to do? Basically, for whatever room is currently loaded, room 0, room 1, room 2, it's going to get the wall list from that room. Okay, and it's going to use the player update method from the player class to basically run and check the walls in that room. So now we're getting really object orientated. So we've got players, we've got rooms being loaded here, and the walls generated within those rooms. So basically we've got 3 different types of objects all being called and run within each other here. And this is really where object orientated programming comes into play and is very beneficial. Okay, so let's see what happens if I run it now. Good news is we shouldn't have any errors, and I can move within my room, and if I go to the side here, oh look, there are some walls here, but we do have one problem: we can't see them. So the room is being created, and look, I can even go through the gap here, but we can't see the walls. So why might that be a problem? What have we not done yet that we can't see our walls? Well, if it's something about not seeing it, generally it's a problem to do with drawing. So down here, where we've got our all sprites list draw, the one thing we haven't yet done is draw the walls for the room. We haven't drawn our room. we haven't drawn our current room. So how do we do that? Well, remember, current room is the room we are in, the object of the room we're in. And we're going to, for the wall list for that room, we are going to draw it. And where are we going to draw it onto? We're going to draw it onto the screen surface. So this is saying for the current room we're in, for the current wall list we're in, draw the walls onto the screen. This should now let us, hopefully, see our walls. Ta-da! There we are. So this is the first time we can actually see the walls properly now. And you can see I've got walls here, top, middle, bottom, and one in the center. Now, only problem is at the moment, the walls work, I can't go through them. But if I try going between the rooms, so if I go from this room, go off the screen, nothing happens. Okay, so I can kind of go out this door, but all I'm doing is really leaving the screen and coming back. It's not yet moving us between the rooms, but we have got a room at least. The other rooms exist, we can't just access them yet. So we want to change this so that when our little character dude here goes off the screen, goes from the right here, it's going to load the next room, and vice versa when we go to the screen the other side. So, last part of our task today is to deal with that. And how do we do that? Well, we've got events here for moving the mouse, etc., which is good, and we've got events for loading our player and updating the player. Okay, but what we need to do is add an event in here to say basically moving or move between rooms, and I'm going to do right. So when you're moving to the right between rooms, okay. If player.rect, if the player rectangle x, if the x position of your player is greater than 801. So basically, if the player has gone to the right and left the room on the right side, we are going to check which room he's in and then change the room. So think of this three-dimensional, like the rooms wrapping around. We're going to say if the current room num equals 0, we're going to change his room to room num 1. So if he's in 0 room currently, we're going to change the room number to 1, and then we're going to load that new room. Current room equals rooms list dot room num with the new number. So we've basically said if it's 0, update the room num to 1, and then load the new room as the current room. However, what happens if you're not in room 0? If you're already in a different room? Guess what? Elif room num equals 1. If you're already in room 1, for example, then we're going to change the room num to 2. And then current room equals rooms list room num, the same. So basically, if you're in room 1, it'll change the new room to room 2, and then load that room. And finally, we've got 3 rooms. So elif room num 2. What are we going to change it to? Well, there is no room 3, okay? Because it goes 0, 1, 2. We actually want to loop back to the start again. So we're going to set the new room to room 0, so it loops around back to start, wraps around to start again. Okay, and then finally, current room equals rooms list room num. Now, if I've done that without mistakes, hopefully what we should have now is if we run this, if I go to the right side of the screen and try and leave through this little gap here, boom. Now, I've done one little mistake here. What's happening here? Because I've left out one little line of code. So basically, it's leaving the room but not updating my new position of my player. So one little line of code I need to add into this now, I'm afraid, is we are going to set the player's new position, player.rect.x to 0. So as you leave the room, it's going to reset the player's position to 0 within the new room. Paste and paste. So take a moment and check that you've got this. Okay, 0, new room, load new room, and then reset the player's location to 0. Okay, check. Take a moment for your code. Pause it if you need to. And then hopefully, if we run that again, cross my fingers here, leave the room, boom, our new room exists. And then if I go through here again, boom, new room exists. However, notice what happens if we go to the left. Oh, that's not currently working because we haven't programmed it. So let's get that final stage working. Now, if we're clever, I'm going to copy and paste all of this. Ready? Copy, copy, copy. Make sure we're in line and paste. But this time, instead of moving right, we're going to move left. What's going to be different about moving left? Well, instead of if x is greater than 801, we're going to say if x is less than minus 15. So if he's gone to the left beyond the screen. And our room numbers are going to be different. So if you're in room 0, we're going to wrap around to the other side of the screen because we're going backwards. So we're going to change the room to room 2. And we're going to say the player rectangle position should be 790 because remember he's going to appear on the right side of the other room as he's moving left. And then we're going to say if room number is 2, we're going to go back to room 1 because we're moving left to the rooms. And remember 790. And then finally, if we're in room 1, we're going to loop back to room 0 and 790 here. So take a moment, check those numbers, make sure you're happy with it. You're minus 15, then room 0, 2, 790, 2, 1, 790, 1, 0, 790. Okay, moment of truth. Does this work? Going left. Oh, goes back to the room. And left. Goes back to the room. And if I go right, it goes the other way. So I can move between the rooms quite happily like that. Okay, final bit. Extension. If you've got time, if you would like a challenge. We've got rooms, but at the moment they all look the same. So your final challenge today then is, can you customize these rooms and make them a bit different? In this example, I've added a little mini sub room in here, and I've also moved the doorway on the right hand side so it's a different place. And in this next room, I've added some extra walls here that you can kind of work your way around. And in my third room, I've made a little corridor, little way to go between, like that, a separate little room here at the bottom. Okay, so can you customize the rooms by changing, remember, the code within your game, within the rooms that have been defined up here, room 3, room 2, and room 1. Okay, good luck, and I'll see you in the next video.